Staying with the story, the South African Human Rights Commission has raised grave concerns over the impact of the recent deadly flash floods that affected Ladysmith and surrounding areas in KZN. And as the province braces itself for more disruptive rains that may result in flooding today, the Commission is calling on government stakeholders and communities to exercise caution. Pavershree, Padayachee, the South African Human Rights Commission in KZN Provincial Manager, joins me for this conversation. Pavershree, thank you so much for your time. A very bleak Christmas for residents of Ladysmith in KZN. What are the Commission's primary concerns?
Thank you. Our primary concerns relate to the victims who have been impacted by these flash floods, and for them to be provided with the necessary temporary accommodation as well as the basic necessities that are in line with the protection of their human dignity. Many of the families have lost loved ones, as we've just heard, and what is very critical is for them to also get some sort of closure under this very traumatic circumstances, to be able to ensure that the bodies of their loved ones are recovered and that they are buried in line with proper dignity as well. We are pleased to note that the government has been very responsive, as well as the search and rescue teams in this regard as well.
And, you know, speaking of government being responsive on this, I mean, we saw it was all hands on deck with those search and rescue operations that have been taking place. Do you think that we're learning our lessons? Because this isn't the first time, unfortunately, that the province is seeing these kinds of floods.
Yes, I think we have to go back to the April 2022 KZN floods disaster. And that's where we sort of identified huge gaps in being adequately prepared to respond effectively to such floods and natural disasters. And I think from that point, we have certainly improved. There has been a much more greater responsiveness. It has certainly been more rapid, but I think that the learning experience is an ongoing one. Whilst we do have warning mechanisms or systems in place, we do need to constantly be monitoring and improving the existing systems that we do have so that we can prepare to respond rapidly, effectively and efficiently, and so that we can prepare communities adequately for these circumstances.
Now, in those April 2022 flash floods, we had 400 people who unfortunately lost their lives. With these ones as well, just over 20. Taking a look at how both scenarios have been handled, clearly there have been some improvements, but would you say that we are where we need to be?
I think we need to be critical on ourselves so that we can be able to protect the citizens of our country. And even those who are not citizens, we need to ensure that everyone is safe at all times and treated equally. I think, yes, certainly I would agree with you. There has been great improvement in terms of how we responded in April 2022 with how we are responding currently. There's certainly a good improvement in terms of us being able to respond faster, more efficiently, and we've obviously learned in terms of the mass care centers and how people were housed and where there were shortcomings and so forth. So whilst we are improving, there is certainly a need to be able to put greater mechanisms in place. One of the things that we should be looking at is obviously there must be ongoing plans to eradicate the homes that are located on the riverbanks and the catchment and low-lying areas, so that going forward it would be much easier to manage such situations. Also, due to the ongoing effects of climate change, we need to ensure that we intensify our disaster preparedness plans and we have better recovery and relief measures in place.
Now, as we know, warnings have been sent out to say that these rains will continue. As a commission, what are your concerns about how we'll deal with this moving forward, knowing that there will be more rains and the possibility of more flooding?
I think under such circumstances, one of the important things is that we have to ensure that all affected communities and residents are brought or removed to some place of safety. whilst the storms and the disaster sort of continues or the impact thereof exists. What we have found is that the temporary accommodation needs to be managed very effectively. What we find is that they cannot be long-term. They need to be managed because they are not suitable or conducive for any form of long-term living. And this is one of the things that we need to look very closely at. Because you'd find under such circumstances, many people have been displaced. They've lost all of their belongings and their homes, and they certainly need to be relocated. And the question is where and how and what are the conditions under which we relocate them in some form of a temporary way so that we can better be able to deal with the situation going forward.
Now, as you mentioned, it doesn't just end at the search operation and also possibly rescue as well. There's also the matter of relocation. What action would the Commission like to the government to be taking now?
Previously, in the April 2022 floods, we've had very many close engagements with the provincial government in respect of the temporary accommodation, and going forward, depending on how the floods will unfold, this engagement will continue. We do have a close working relationship to ensure that the relevant assistance is provided. And I think that we have to commend and acknowledge the efforts that have been made by the provincial government as well as the national government, who has come in to ensure that there are sufficient resources available to attend to the present crisis. And I think we must also commend the efforts of the search and rescue team that has been out, and all other stakeholders and citizens who have come out to aid all those that they are able to.
And taking a look at the situation right now with climate change, and considering that there will be more rains, not just, in the coming days, but as we move forward in the future, what role will the South African Human Rights Commission be playing should this not be dealt with effectively by government?
So the Commission's role is more of a monitoring role to ensure that the necessary relief and assistance is provided to all those that are affected. Where we find that the necessary relief is not being affected or provided, then we would obviously have to step in and consider what are the options that the Commission has to be able to take the matter forward on behalf of the respective victims and their families.
And from the Commission's side, what would your message be to the residents of KZN at this moment?
I think it has been a very, very sad tragedy that has occurred over the festive period. The Commission would like to extend its sincere condolences to the families who have lost loved ones, as well as all other families that have been displaced and affected by this tragedy. The Commission would like to call on government, stakeholders and citizens as well to work together and to in tolerance and to respect each other's rights as we deal with this crisis.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Pavershree Padayachee from the South African Human Rights Commission in KwaZulu-Natal.